Hello and welcome back to World of Warcraft and yet another gold challenge mode dungeon run. My name's Lumin and right now it's time for Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. This was one of my favorites. I seriously enjoyed doing this one because of all the cool little tricks that you can do that I guess people don't usually do on this dungeon when they do the normal or heroic or mythic versions of it. It seems to be something that you do almost exclusively in challenge modes. Before we get started here, I will mention that our party composition is exactly the same in all the runs. It's myself as a protection paladin, Zoe is our disciplined priest, our two hunters are Beastmaster and Marksmanship, that's Moving and Mikai, and finally Luthira is an enhancement shaman. Another reason I like this run is because it has a lot of undead in it, and as a protection paladin that makes me super happy. You'll see right from the start here, I already begin stunning them with my Holy Wrath. And you gotta just use that all the time. If you're playing Protection Paladin, then, or if you have a Protection Paladin tank in your group, then you just gotta tell that person to use Holy Wrath on cooldown all the time. It just mitigates so much damage, keeps them stunned. In this specific situation here, you can see it keeps them in those Mirror of the Blade Master trinkets. Those things that make my game lag so much. I don't know, there's some other bug with them. You'll see some drops in FPS every now and then. It's mostly due to that trinket. But those first packs, or the packs that look like that, they aren't too dangerous. These guys, however, the Void Spawns, they are super dangerous. They cast Void Pulse, and Void Pulse does a whole lot of damage to your entire party if you don't interrupt it. If you're a Protection Paladin, you've got a lot of interrupts at your disposal, but there's a bit of RNG involved. So if your shield doesn't proc, then you can't keep tossing the Avenger's shield at the mob to like make sure it's silenced the whole time. Now when you run into this next part, you gotta choose either left or right, the side that doesn't have the void spawn on top of the altar here, and then you go for that immediately, and I suppose you kill that side before the void spawn spawns at that side again, if that makes sense. But these guys, the Shadowmoon Loyalist specifically, has this big orb that he shoots. There it goes out to the left. That does a lot of damage. You got to avoid it. And that's pretty much it. I mean, again, as a paladin, I was just using Holy Wrath the whole time and stunning these spirits. I tried to, for the most part, once again, keep all these mobs inside those trinkets spinning over there. But in many cases, it's better to start moving before the mobs are actually dead and just kite them and kill them while you run. Now right here is where the fun starts. You can see there's a marker on the ground there, a yellow marker. That's where we're going to put the mushroom chair down that we're going to be using to break certain parts of this instance, I suppose you could call it. You can see the mushroom chair allows us to jump over a little invisible wall there. And in doing so, we just skip a good bunch of running. We skip, I think, 2 or 3 trash packs, some annoying trash packs actually. And, well, we're right here at the boss. Now, I'm going to talk more about the mushroom chair in just a little bit when we get to the next time we use it, but on this boss, you do everything much the same as you do on Heroic or Normal. You don't really care too much, and because you're using Heroism on this boss, you basically just want to try and nuke it down before any of the mechanics really matter. She does Whispers of the Dark Star. You can see where those shadow daggers are going to fall. They're kind of telegraphed on the ground with these purple swirly things. You just got to move out of them. It's pretty simple. And when she does Dark Communion, you don't even really need to kill the mob. The defiled spirit that's coming at you, you can just stun, slow, disable, do whatever you can do to it to keep it away from her. Because I think for most groups you should be able to slow the mobs enough or stun them enough for the boss to just not get the cast off in time. She gets one Dark Eclipse off here, which is her other main ability. And for this, all you gotta do is run into one of the little moons on the ground, and then you won't take damage, and that's basically that. There is a bit of group-wide damage that you can't really avoid, but it's not more than your healer should be able to handle. It shouldn't be too bad. So the boss is down easily. Again, mostly because of Bloodlust. I think if you didn't Bloodlust there, then you would have a lot more mechanics to deal with, so it's a pretty great spot to use that. From this point on, some of the trash pools are a little bigger, which I think is also, again, why I kind of liked this dungeon. You got to make up for some of the trash that we skipped before by jumping over the little mushroom chair spot there. But these guys are simple. The spirits, or the subjugated souls at least, they're the undead ones. They can be stunned again by Holy Wrath and stuff like that. And the enslavers, they cast this Rending Void Lash. You can see he's doing it there. Sometimes they actually cast it and you can't see the cast bar, but you can still interrupt them or stun them or whatever to cancel it. Then when you move on to the Exhumers, it's usually better to not do what we did there. One of the hunters, I think it was moving there, he tried to pull the Exhumer towards us before it could get the cast off on the graves, but because he attacked it and didn't stun it, it got the cast off anyway. Basically what you want to do when you engage with the Exhumers is you want to stun them as soon as you aggro them. Then they won't get that cast off, then they won't exhume the spirits Those are those two undeads that are attacking us there. At the end of the day, I don't think it really matters because the spirits don't really do that much damage, but you are killing them for nothing. Like, it's extra mobs that you're killing that will not count towards the 36 enemies you need, so it does actually waste a little bit of time. You'll see we take down the Exhumer and then we start kiting the spirits and just killing them as we go. I think I even engaged the boss while the two spirits are still attacking us. I'm not sure if our DPS got them down, we'll see in just a moment. But when you come in around here, avoid the shadowy bricks on the ground. More spirits will come out. If you step on them, you'll see, I think, moving steps on one at the back there. I don't know what he's doing. He's clowning around a little bit. He just strafes into one immediately. But you can handle them on this boss. Again, this boss also not that tough. In terms of mechanics and abilities and stuff, he has this Void Blast, which is a conal attack. You just kind of want to aim that away from your DPS and stuff, unlike I did there. I mean, I suppose Mika ran into that, but still, it does do a decent amount of damage that you can, for the most part, avoid. When he does Void Vortex, then you just want to stay away from him. Keep DPSing from a range, he'll stop casting soon enough, and then after that, he does Soul Shred, which is a little weird, and I always struggle when Soul Shred comes up. You need to find your soul and DPS it down, and here it took me a moment or two to find my soul, to get it selected, targeted, and for some reason tab targeting doesn't really work. Then you gotta DPS it down, then you have to click on it, and you have to do it kind of quickly. Everyone's doing the same thing, but as a tank you gotta do it kind of quickly because your healer can't heal you until you're out, because you're in a different phase. So you'll see I dropped really low there. Fortunately enough, I didn't panic too much, and I didn't like waste my lay on hands or potion or whatever. And then next up, Void Devastation, another ability of his. I think that's just one that ranged need to dodge. I'm not entirely sure. He puts these marks on the floor, you can see them all around, and then they, like, explode. Basically, I don't know. I don't know. It feels like a lot of the mechanics just did very little in most of these runs that we did. So, boss is dead, we start moving immediately. Here, we actually pull an extra pack. Another pack that we wouldn't usually pull if we were just running the normal route through the instance itself. But this is a difficult one because there's an Exhumer, so you gotta stun it. You gotta stop it from exhuming more spirits from the ground. And then there are two enslavers that you actually also want to try and interrupt. You can see they just casting away, and they weren't being interrupted or silenced or whatever. I finally got to silence both of them and stop them from casting there. It took a little bit of time, and they just immediately start casting again, which is kind of silly. If you are much more confident with your group than we were, if you think you can handle much bigger pulls, you can actually pull this group along with the next group, and then you can just like AoE DPS them down. I think if we were using Capacitor Totem properly here, we probably would have done that, and we would have saved even more time in doing so, because we're actually pulling this Exhumer now, then we pull in the pack at the back there, again because we skipped some stuff earlier on. And we got to do this to get our enemy count up to where it needs to be. There are going to be a few extra packs along the way that you'll see we'll pull that you, I guess, wouldn't expect us to pull. But again, much like the others, these guys are pretty simple. I'm just trying to keep them in the trinkets here to make sure they die nice and quick. After a couple of runs with 3 agility DPS using those trinkets, I have some serious appreciation for the amount of damage they can do with them, so I always try and keep the mobs in them as much as possible. Now it's time for another mushroom chair trick. You'll see there's another little spot here. We didn't mark this one. I made sure that Zoe, the one who had the chair, the only one who had the chair, knew exactly where to put it. You can see I was lining up nicely to show her where to stand so she could put it down. In using this, and actually in jumping down into the water, we get to skip all the spiders and the bats and stuff down this little spiraling passageway, and we get to skip the 2 snake worm monsters on the bridge. It's really good, and those are incredibly annoying mobs, especially in challenge modes. They just do a lot of damage, so we, instead of killing those, we go for the ones that are easier to kill, that don't have such high damage abilities, basically the more manageable groups. Now we're running along the side here as to not aggro the bats accidentally. All of us didn't get water walking from our shaman here because when you jump into the water, then you actually get silenced. The water silences you, so you can't do it when you're already in, but it didn't really matter. Like, we all got there quick enough, I suppose. So you basically skip everything up until the boss, and you just do the boss immediately. And then after that, after the boss itself here, you find a couple of extra mobs to finish up the 36 that you need. Now, we're going to talk about Bonemaw for just a second here. This guy, I always struggle on him, like on Heroic and Mythic and probably even Normal. I always get sucked in and tossed in the water when he does his Inhale. And I think a lot of that comes down to Deadly Boss Mod just being annoying. Like, it doesn't always show when Inhale's gonna happen. And I keep making the mistake of standing too close to the boss. Because you don't have to stand right against him as a melee, and if you do stand right against him, when he does Inhale, then he just sucks you up immediately. And he tosses you out immediately, and then you gotta swim around to one of those little water torrents to get yourself shot back up. But if you watch where the Corpse Breath is, and you just stay alert and ready for Inhale the whole time, then you should be okay. He basically just does that, and then he does these body slams the whole time, and once his first Inhale is done, then he summons 2 more of himself, smaller versions of himself, and they also do body slams, and then there's like very, very, very little space, very little room to actually stand, and you'll see how it looks in just a moment. So there's Inhale, I pop my speed boost, immediately run back, but you also want to watch out to not be too far in to the Corpse Breath, because you got to run out again when Inhale ends, because it keeps doing damage and stuff to you. Now, any second you're going to see even more body slams appear. See there's barely any space for us to stand. We got the narrowest little gap there as melee DPS, but at this point, as you can see, and I think for most groups, the boss should basically be dead, so that's okay. Now, I immediately turned around here because I'm looking for the bats. That's one of the packs that we actually need to pull to make up our 36 enemies. I told the hunters to go and misdirect on them quickly to get them to us, and with these guys, you don't have to be too careful and cautious. You can actually start DPSing them. Like I could, for instance, have already moved a little quicker here. They do a bit of damage, of course, but if you kite them properly and if your group stuns and disables them and whatever, then you can probably start moving a little sooner than I did and move on to the next pack a little sooner than we did here. But you need these, you need the next pack, and you need the pack after that, plus the final boss to make up the 36 again, because we skipped some stuff with the mushroom chairs. The bats, however, definitely easier than some of the other packs that you would have had to have fought, like these monstrous corpse spiders. These guys, you kind of want to keep them disabled all the time. Because as far as I know, every single spell that they can cast does a ton of damage, and it's like really dangerous. That Necrotic Burst does damage to everyone in an area, and then the Death Venom, it pretty much just kills you really, really quickly. You can see whenever they get a Necrotic Burst cast off, our whole group just loses a lot of life. So if you can stun, disable, interrupt, whatever, do it here. Like really, really try and do it. At this point, after you kill Bonemaw, you actually have sort of like, you could consider it a save point, because you now respawn right there where you fought Bonemaw instead of at the start of the instance. So if you do mess up on this next pack, then I suppose you're in luck because you don't have to run very far. We do mess up on this pack. We do, right now. And you may or may not have noticed that the explosive trap from one of the hunters back there actually knocked one of the bats back into the stairs, and it removed it from combat, so we are missing one enemy. At this point, we get super lucky after we wipe here. It is lucky that we wipe. It really is lucky that we wipe, because we would otherwise not have gotten that bat. You'll see in just a second here. Basically, the interrupts, they didn't go according to plan. I was like a split second late with one of my interrupts, and because of that, it sort of just cascaded out of control, and everyone just died. I think at this point, I should have just let myself die. I should have ran back to rejoin the group quicker so we could rebuff and eat food and stuff like that a little quicker. But because we had so much time, it didn't really matter all that much. You can see the bat creeping in from the side there, attacking our healer. Again, really, really lucky that we saw that bat and we picked it up now, because we're on 33 out of 36. And if we hadn't gotten that, we would have been done with the instance on 35 out of 36 if we didn't aggro the bat here. So, very, very fortuitous. Now, on TeamSpeak, we were busy discussing the interrupt order again. We were trying to quickly make sure that we've got it 100% moving in to the next one. And we do it reasonably well on this one. A lot of this comes down to how many Avenger Shield procs I get. If I get lucky and I get a lot of them, I can basically keep both of these guys silenced for the entirety of the fight, and no one else really needs to do anything at all. But again, that's just a bit of RNG, and everything needs to go exactly right for that to happen. But we're going into this again. Now we are much more confident, and we actually have a skull and a cross. We're going to make sure we kill the one before the other one. I said that I was going to take the left one this side, and I think I just got, again, really lucky. I got all the procs that I needed. I still have my normal interrupt rift. You can see I've got shield proc after shield proc after shield proc. The explosive trap came in handy there for once. and I got both those interrupts. When there's only one left, it's easy. Then you've got like 5 people in a group that can interrupt all on the same one, and once it's down, it's just the final boss that remains, Ner'zhul. Once you enter his chamber at the end here, you can't go back, so again, you got to be sure you've got all the enemies you need. But Ner'zhul himself, because we've got heroism here, he wasn't too tough again. I just feel like whenever you have heroism on a boss, and you can use like pre-pots and stuff, and you can just go all out on DPS, you get to skip a lot of the important mechanics. He does a conal slam, I guess we can call it that, a shadow slam, it's called Malevolence there, and as a tank you just got to aim that away from your group, and as the group, you got to be careful. You got to be really careful. It's better not to stack up. If you're ranged, he does that weird little shadow glyph thing, I'm not sure what it's called, on the ground that you also have to avoid. It does a little bit of pulsating damage if you stand close to it. And then his main ability is Ritual of Bones. You can see it happening right here. You just need to DPS one of the skeletons down to make a gap in the wall of shadow, and then your entire party needs to go through there. And again, you need to try and make sure you're aiming the Malevolence away from your group, because if you aim it at your group here, there's no way for them to run. So you got to be really, really careful. I mean, like as a tank, as a melee DPS, and as a ranged DPS, or even the healer, you have to be careful because those things do a lot of damage. I don't know if they one-shot you, but they do a lot. So there you go, that's Ner'zhul, and that right there is Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. This was probably one of our smoothest runs. I think we finished it with 2 minutes to spare. And again, as I said at the start, it's nice doing all the little tricks and stuff, and it's also great as a protection paladin. You can check back here soon for more. Give this one a like, share it, and do all that other good stuff. Let me know how this has gone for you if you are attempting it yourself. Most importantly though, happy challenge modes in Warlords of Draenor. Happy that.